Hey everybody, how's it going? I just want to take a quick second to thank the sponsor of this episode, and that's Sprout Studio. I wish this service had existed 10 years ago when I started my business. They have all the functionality of a CRM in terms of being able to send client questionnaires, proposals, contracts, but they also provide other services for photographers and videographers, such as gallery delivery, scheduling, email marketing campaigns, bookkeeping, customizable templates, and contracts. It's really all you need to run your studio in one service. It's really fantastic. They're offering 30% off from Black Friday through Cyber Monday, 30% off of any new plan for the next 3 years. So you can take advantage of this for 3 years, but you can only sign up through November 30th. So to do that, check out sproutredo.com/podcast. Make sure you use this specific link. It really helps them track their investment. and I want them to know you came from here if you end up taking advantage. It's SproutRedo, SproutRedo.com/podcast. Really appreciate their support. And on to the episode. Jesse, what's up, man?
How's it going?
It's going well. I just got back from a run. It is freaking cold out, and I hate running in the cold, but I forced myself to do it, and I'm glad I did.
Yeah, you see, you're much better than me. The cold kind of like deters me from a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, and it's hard.
It's freezing up here in Jersey too. So
yeah, I think you're probably 3 hours north of me, so you're probably 5-10 degrees colder. It tends to track pretty reliably that way.
Yeah, exactly.
I wish.
Although it's honestly, it's been a pretty mild fall, which has been good.
I agree. Yeah, it has been really nice. I kind of wonder, given the change in climate, how often we'll actually have massive snowstorms anymore on this area of the East Coast. I guess you probably still do, again, because you're well enough away. But where we are, we've only, since living in Baltimore now for about 6-7 years, only had 2 giant snowstorms. And growing up, I don't know, I feel like we used to get, I don't know, it's all anecdotal, right? It's hard. It's not like I've looked at any data of the number of feet of snow and how much is accumulated, but it seems like we get a lot more rain now than snow, unfortunately. I wish we got more snow, but it's been so mild this year and last year. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, no, and I have zero complaints.
Exactly.
I'm able to shoot a lot more and stay outside more.
So like, what if the East Coast
all
becomes
works for me.
like the best weather, the best climate to live in? It's like, oh,
the ultimate long game everybody's been playing.
Yeah, right. That's why DC was picked as the capital.
We'll teach everybody over in California. Yeah, they knew what was happening.
Have you always been in the New Jersey area? Is that where you're from?
Yeah. I grew up in a small town, kind of at the very peak of New Jersey, in the mountains there. Not a lot going on.
There are mountains in New Jersey?
Oh, absolutely.
What?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the very northernmost part is pretty much all mountains and like some scattered farmland and waterfalls and nature.
What?
And
okay, I knew about the
gorgeous.
farmland, which I was also surprised about, only because I get the occasional wedding venue, and it's stunning. And like, this is great, but I have not seen, I guess I haven't ventured too far off that main 95 highway.
Yeah, you got to go pretty far north, pretty much where PA, New Jersey, and New York come together is gorgeous.
I guess, okay. Yeah, I was going to guess, and I see it here. Part of the Appalachian Trail goes through New Jersey, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, we used to hike that all the time when I was in Boy Scouts and all that.
Yeah, this is beautiful. So I grew up in a very similar looking area in more central Virginia, a place called Lynchburg, with the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Oh, yeah.
Looks very similar. Well, that's great.
Yeah, my brother lives down in Virginia now, so I'm down there pretty frequently.
Cool. Have you been actively shooting this year? What's the story?
It's definitely been a change for sure. I mean, luckily, like, I do a lot of portrait stuff and not as many weddings and stuff like that. But any weddings I did have definitely got rescheduled, or they opted for like a smaller, more intimate family affair. And then they're originally going to book me next year for a big ordeal, but a lot of them have just kind of canceled that and kept the small wedding and just moved on.
That seems to be my vibe as well. People that you will definitely do the big thing next year, but if they went ahead and did something small now, it seems like they're kind of like, we're good.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Once I delivered the images, it's like, I think we're good now. We're going to, we decided to, with the state of the country and where everything's going, we're just going to save the money, and these came out great and we're done.
Yeah, it's almost like you don't want to do too good a job with the photos because
exactly.
they see them, they're like, oh, these are amazing. We don't need to spend a whole wedding. These are fine. We're good.
Yeah, and you definitely get that feeling a little bit. You're like, man, like, but what can you do?
Well, I like your rig there, your lighting setup and camera and everything for this recording. It's very nice. I need to.
Oh, it was slapped together pretty last minute because I don't do too many of these. So, but it's a Sony A7R3 and then a Rode mic.
Yeah, the Rode mic's awesome. I've been thinking, I've got access, obviously, to like 5 different camera bodies that I could use as proper webcam, but I want it to be a permanent installation, and I use enough of these cameras for other video stuff, for educational content or whatever I'm putting out, reviews, that I don't want to set one up permanently at this desk, but I think I just have to buy one of those Sony. I think Sony makes sort of a fixed lens, maybe a 35 f2, something like that. I could have not one of their, I don't know. I'll figure it out. I'm just lazy.
Yeah, the Sony was my primary shooter, and then I switched over to Fuji GFX.
Oh.
And
let's talk about that.
Now the Sony kind of sits on the shelf, so it worked out perfectly for
Which is that? So they're in their second version of the GFX, right? They have a number 2 came out this year. Is that right?
Well, they have the GFX S, which is like your standard like SLR style body. Then they have the 50R, which is like a rangefinder style, which is the one I have.
Oh, okay. And that came out this year, right? It's newer?
No, the one that came out this year was the 100, that 100 megapixel crazy. That was a little overkill. I don't think I need 100 megapixels anytime soon.
Probably not. Yeah. It's
even with this, it's 50, and I'm like, this is crazy file sizes. And
so you have the GFX R. Okay, cool. I've been eyeing that, but I don't have any lenses. I'd have to buy into a whole new system, so it's like...
Yeah, the camera body, like Fuji's been pretty good about putting stuff on sale, so they knocked $1,000 off, and that kind of made the decision for me.
Wow, that's generous.
And then I have a bunch of old like Mamiya medium format lenses that I was able to adapt right away to it, and some old Sigma art lenses with the Canon mount, and they actually cover the full sensor. So.
Nice. Oh, okay, great. Yeah, I've been having that experience. Surprisingly, it's fun to throw something on, not knowing for sure. I have the Hasselblad 907 X50C rig. It's their newer medium format. Probably the same sensor. I think it might be exactly the same.
I think it's the exact same sensor. Yeah, Fuji and Hasselblad kind of have a weird history of sharing things like that.
Did not know that.
Even as far back as like the Hasselblad X-Pan.
Huh. Cool.
Fuji had an exact same one that was like the XT something or whatever, but it was identical bodies. They just slapped a Fuji or Hasselblad logo on it, whether
they just licensed
you were in Japan or the US.
Wow. Well,
yeah, Japan it was Fuji, and then US was Hasselblad.
That's really fascinating. I wonder. I know recently learned that Hasselblad was bought by DJI, so I wonder how that influenced anything or not. But
yeah, my drone has the Hasselblad camera on it, so.
It's nice to have this new rig, this giant medium format sensor, and then throw on all kinds of different lenses and see which one is so well designed that even on it was designed for a 35 millimeter coverage. It's actually so well designed in terms of vignette and everything that it still covers the medium format sensor size. It's crazy, even though it's technically cropped
absolutely.
Format. It's fun.
Yeah, I think most of the Sigma art lenses do a pretty fine job of that because they're so well manufactured.
Awesome. I haven't even tried those yet. I've only tried my Leica lenses. I have a Hasselblad lens from like the V-mount system, I guess. That obviously covers it well. And then I've got some Nikon lenses and Canon lenses that actually work pretty well. But I haven't tried any of the Sigma stuff. So that'll be fun.
Yeah, and the autofocus seems to work and tracks eyes and all that with the body.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Fuji has eye tracking with their medium format, and Hasselblad does not. I'm bummed.
Which is also interesting because it is the same sensor and they share so much. You think they would have just
gone for it,
paired it over, but
Hasselblad's probably behind.
I think Hasselblad, yeah. And they also like to like really promote like that film feel and stuff like that. So I think they prefer people like manual focusing when possible.
And the focus peaking is great. It is very fast and a great experience. Yeah, it's lovely. So you're mostly, do you find space in any wedding work that you do to shoot with that Fuji? Does it keep up with wedding stuff or is it mostly for portraits?
I pretty much only pull it out on the wedding day for like the couples portraits.
Got it.
Just because it is a slower camera to use, and like you really have to nail that focus. It's so easy to miss focus, especially I have an adapted Sigma 8514 on it that I use for a lot of that portrait work, and the depth of field is just razor thin.
And with the 50 megapixels, you can zoom in, and any miss is twice as apparent versus like a 20 megapixel.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You're like, oh crap. Yeah.
Even like day of, you're like, you could swear you nailed focus, and then you come home and blow it up on the iMac, and you're like, damn, how was I that far off?
So the Nikon D850 was like a 45 megapixel sensor. It was one of the early huge resolution DSLR cameras when that came out. And I have a theory that a lot of people, I think there were some legitimate issues, but I think the vast majority of people that had complaints about that camera nailing focus, or maybe it was the D800. I think that might have been it. A lot of people were like, it just misses focus. Like it really, I think it's just because now they had 2-3 times the resolution that they were used to from whatever they came from previously. And if you still exported and printed or whatever at the same 1500 pixels for your website, it would be the same relative sharpness or in focus as whatever their previous camera was, but because you could zoom in while you're editing and see it 1-to-1 twice as big, now you realize like, oh, it totally
you notice all those flaws.
The lenses weren't designed to keep up with that, but it was funny to see that realization never hit so many photographers that were just, for whatever reason, upset that their camera was not as good as they thought it was going to be, even though it was.
I've seen a lot of that too with people that try to shoot film later on, especially medium format film, because the film plane is so much bigger now, and you're like, the focus is off on this camera, or this camera's junk, and then you look at it and you're like, no, you're just not taking the time to nail focus.
Totally. Yeah. The tolerances and forgiveness is far less the larger your sensor size goes, it seems. But it's exciting. I really hope that Fuji, or the eye tracking technology and everything that kind of exists in the full frame sensors now, works its way up to the medium format stuff. But it's going to be a while. I think that's just an exponentially more difficult problem. I don't think it tracks on nearly the same timeline in terms of the technology evolution. You should see, I have a 100 megapixel phase one. It's the IQ3, and it is so bad with autofocus. It's single point in the middle. It's very loud. It hunts like crazy, like jitters all over the place. The focus point literally doesn't move. Like you're really locked into one area where you're going to get focus or not. It is so bad.
Oh yeah. I think it's a little bit more difficult for them to do, but Fuji seems to be doing a great job. Like the GFX 100, the newest one they just came out with, seems to be far better in that aspect, where the eye really does lock on. I've seen people actually using it for some wildlife. Okay. So that's promising that it's actually able to track. And I'm just surprised that they were able to put sensor stabilization into it, which is crazy.
I didn't know they had that. Cool. That is impressive.
Yeah.
Wow. I was talking to someone else, and the theory kind of surfaced through the conversation that it seems maybe that eventual professional photographers, quote, however you want to, but people that kind of make their living day in and day out with a camera, could trend more toward medium format as sort of the default look in what they do, as cell phones, iPhone cameras and all that sort of assume replace the more common 35 millimeter full frame look and feel. I wonder if, as the price points drop and everything, most professionals, just literally go full medium format in whatever capacity they can afford, and hopefully that kind of default look becomes associated. I don't know, maybe.
I'm thinking that's probably what's going to happen, especially with Fuji pushing the envelope for affordability in medium format.
Yeah.
With the 50R, especially with their $1,000 off that they have going on right now, it's, you're looking at the same price point as a top end mirrorless.
Yeah, it's not a good investment in terms of resale value. My phase one rig is oh crap, how much can I get for it versus how much I paid?
Yeah, exactly.
Whoa. But that's okay. So what's going on? We've never talked before. What else do you fill your days with other than photography? You got a nice little, is that your home studio, home office where you're sitting right now?
Yeah. This is the home spot. So it's, I kind of, I'm into collecting antiques and stuff of history. So my space is kind of part museum, part gallery.
Wow. Any particular era, or is it just anything?
Mainly like Victorian era.
Nice.
Yeah, so stuff like that. And I try to incorporate that stuff in more of my personal projects with shooting. And and all that stuff. I lean to a little bit more of, I guess it's technically conceptual photography, although I think that word kind of sounds pretentious.
Sure. Yeah.
And kind of has weird connotations, especially nowadays. But
yeah.
That's why I generally just tell people I do portraits.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. You don't want to set a bias or a picture in someone's mind about what you portrait is a safe space to
yeah
start.
It's also like when people like technically classify as like fine art, I feel like it has that same weird connotation of people make up judgments before they actually see the work.
100%.
So.
Yeah. That's anytime a client asks me like, well, how do you define your style? And they're clearly reading off like these 10 questions to ask your wedding photographer list. I'm like, I tend to go straight into like the literal geometry or color of what I do and not try and say, it's creative, artistic stuff. Does that mean so many different things to so many different
exactly.
people?
Yeah. I try to keep it as broad as possible because why not? Look at my work and decide for yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. I really like the light behind you. Is that a special video light for video, or is that just something you had? That big old bright?
No, it's one of those, I guess it's a knockoff version of like the ice lights or those.
Yep.
It's made by Yongnu. It was like $40, but it's battery powered. So it's easy to bring on shoots and like wedding dates for like a little fill light or an interesting hair light.
Yeah.
Or to light paint with, stuff like that.
I dig it. It's really cool.
Yeah, it's super portable. So
just before we started talking, I discovered I have a bunch of hue lights everywhere in my house. That's the only light you see behind me
nice.
here. And I was thinking, I'm like, okay, there's like the button to press to change it to like a normal color temperature for a light bulb. But what other colors can I say? Obviously, you can just say like, Siri, turn all the lights blue, red, green. And I looked it up on Reddit, and there's a huge thread. There are literally like 400 different colors you can tell hue to change the color temperature. Yeah. And they're insanely like specific. It's weird. Let me see if I can find it again. I was having a lot of fun, and I can't remember what I landed on. I think I landed on Tiger Eye.
Nice.
It's crazy. There's like Alice blue, Air Force blue, apple green, Army green, azure, Bayo blue, beaver.
Nice.
Sunlight's beaver, Bulgarian rose. I mean, the list is long. It goes. It is crazy.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just so sad that I'm only now realizing this, like 8 years into owning these lights. I really could have been using them for all kinds of creative things.
Well, now it renewed it in your mind.
That's true.
So there you
That's
go.
the best part about technology, is that when you discover new features, sometimes it kind of like increases the lifespan and excitement of what it is.
Oh, absolutely.
Tyrian.
Yeah,
Tyrian
nothing's
purple.
better than a good hidden.
Yeah. Tyrian purple.
Yeah, it sounds like an old box of Crayola crayons with the weird names.
Yeah, you're probably right. 100%. I guess I never paid enough attention to the actual names of the colors when I was actively using crayons.
They're always quite odd. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah.
That would be a fun job to kind of, I'm sure it's probably just color scientists that would work in a place like Crayola crayon.
Yeah, exactly. Or I guess now Philips Hue.
Yeah. So have you been pretty much kind of locked in and hanging out in New Jersey, or any travel this year? I'm always interested, because it seems, the only reason I ask is because it seems like when people, if they do travel, it tends to be more rural and kind of different and creative for them. So I'm just wondering if you've had a chance to do that, or if you're playing it safe and staying home.
I played it safe for the beginning, from like March until June-ish. And then by then, so many of my travel plans got canceled or rescheduled that the bug was just itching. Yeah. So did a short little trip with another photographer friend of mine out to Colorado. We flew out and then rented a car and like kind of drove home zigzag style. Nice. And went up through like South Dakota and just hit a bunch of national parks and tried to challenge ourselves shooting different things than we normally do.
Anchored in photography as sort of the anchor every day, or did you just send it?
Exactly. Mostly photography. I mean, we both needed to get out, and usually we're both so busy that we can never travel together like that, and we've been meaning to for years, so it was kind of a perfect opportunity for that. And then we figured staying in like national parks and off the beaten path was the safest option. And
it wasn't too crowded, because part of me could see that like everyone really wasn't out there all at the same time, and it's actually crowded. It wasn't. Okay, good, awesome.
So, yeah, it was. The flight was pretty much empty. Like the row behind us, in front of us, and next to us was empty, and the flight was maybe at 20% capacity. and that would be a lot. And that seemed relatively safe and clean the whole time. And then obviously, like, we were good about wiping down surfaces, wearing masks when possible, stuff like that. And then most of the national parks were empty, with the exception of Yellowstone was a little crowded, but you just kind of stay away from the popular stuff and you were fine.
There's enough space out there to deal with a lot of people, I would hope.
Yeah.
Especially if you're trying to explore new places and you're not going to like Instagram hotspots or something like that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, exactly. And that was the whole point of the trip. Because I mean, I've done the cross country thing a couple times.
Really?
I lived out of a car for 2 or 3 months and drove around the country photographing.
When was this in your life span? Like, was it recent? A long time ago?
It was about 4 years ago. So
awesome.
Yeah, I was working at a job as a like studio product photographer, and then they went through like massive layoffs and stuff like that. So I got like a big severance, and then I was like, well, this is the only time in my life I'll probably have a chance to do this. So let me just pack everything in the car and leave.
Wow. What kind of car?
Just like a small four-door.
Oh my gosh. So it was not like glamping in one of those decked out.
No, not at all. There was a tent
awesome.
in the back that, like, you know, would find some campgrounds here and there, or KOAs, set it up and sleep. But a lot of nights were spent in the back seat.
Oh, okay. Jeez. And so you traveled cross country consistently when you were living that way? Or did you kind of set up camp for a long time in certain areas and just play
it was kind of, I mean, I know a good amount of people throughout the country, so we kind of like couch surfed and camped when we couldn't find a couch. Certain spots I stayed longer than others. Like once I got out to LA, I stayed there for a couple weeks because I knew a bunch of people to work with and stuff like that. And then it kind of just depended on weather. If the weather was shitty, we just moved on.
Which is, I suppose, why Southern California has so many kind of what's couch surfing type of people, because the weather is so nice. Yeah, you can kind of make your way around that region for so long. Fantastic. Wow. Well, I'm very envious, honestly. It's so, I think for the past 10 years, I've said like this year at some point, I'm going to do a cross country trip. And honestly, I haven't done it since I was 10 years old. And my mom loaded up, we had a Plymouth Horizon, like a 4-door, 80s car with the handles falling off. And we drove all the way out to Arizona to visit my grandparents, her parents. And that was our cross country road trip. And then we tracked back through Colorado to visit some family there. And that was the last time. And you're right. This year is a good
It was a good excuse to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. What's sort of your history in photography then? Did you start at this studio, or were you into it even before then?
Luckily enough, my high school had like a full darkroom in it. Cool. And they had a big collection of Canon AE1 like 35 millimeter cameras. So that was like the first time I ever picked up a camera and shot.
I need to know, with that specific camera and that model, how many people can say that was the first? That was the first time.
I think so many. It's just such an easy, consistent camera. There's not too many problems with it. It's was it pretty affordable at the time? I mean, it must have been, because there's so many of them out there. Like my high school alone, I think we had like 20 or 30 of them. So like,
yeah, wow.
But that was cool. Like we learned how to hand roll film and load our own film cartridges and develop everything in large. And so that was cool. But I never, at that point in my life, had thought that you could even make a job out of photography for whatever reason. It just sounded too good to be true. Like it was just these few select people that worked for Nat Geo, and that was it.
Yeah, right. Totally. I still get that. Who was it? A friend of mine this early spring, she's an elementary school teacher, and those kinds of jobs right now, they're, especially earlier this year, we're trying to improvise like what to do with these Zoom classes. So she's just reaching out to every friend who does something other than teaching to like give a 15-minute Zoom talk about what they do. And I was trying to have these like dozen kids on Zoom, and I'm like, yeah, I'm a photographer. They're like, why? I'm like, oh, I love photography. Blah, blah, blah. Like,
but what else do you do?
Why do people pay you for photos? I'm like, well, someday you might want to get married. It's a big deal. Complete fundamental disconnect, inability to connect.
Yep.
Doing this for a living with, yeah.
It's always
not much has changed.
But what do you really do? Or what else do you do?
Exactly.
You're like, no, this is it. Like, I just touch a camera all day and take pictures in one way or another, and that's my income.
It's pretty amazing to see, if you want to like visualize, you hold your camera in your hand and then you look at everything in your life around you, and how this one idea, this product, obviously it's not just a singular literal product, but this one idea can create all the stuff that exists around you as a job and a path through life. It's insane. It's amazing,
I mean, even in high school, if you would have told me this is what I would be doing, I would have never believed myself.
Wow. Yeah. So you stayed on the photographic kind of journey since high school? Did you ever do any other?
So, yeah, I went to college for fine art where I painted through most of college.
Oh, wow.
And then realized that was probably the most pointless degree I could get.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, and then shortly after that, I was involved heavily in like the local music scene because that's, kind of what New Jersey's known for. So a lot of alt music. Yeah. And couldn't play any instruments, but wanted to involve myself in some way or another. So I picked up a camera and started photographing local bands and doing promos for their work. And then the music thing was like a whole separate life I've had, like, I guess 5-6 years ago now. But I was on tour. I went on Warped Tour.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I photographed with a lot of those bands. So like Circus Survive, Anberlin, stuff like that.
Oh, what? Dude, this is great. I love that. I love both those bands. I don't know if, well, hold on. I'm trying to find, there's a photographer. Do you know Jared Scott by chance? He was on tour constantly with MXPX. He's just a photographer app.
I'm sure we've crossed paths or talked at an event somewhere.
So that's exciting. So the reason I moved to Baltimore was, well, sort of influenced heavily by a producer who owned a studio here, Brian McTurnan. Did you ever happen to meet Brian? He doesn't go out on tour very much, but he did Circa's first 2 records.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure I've heard the name before, but if he wasn't out on tour, I probably didn't meet him.
Yeah, I was curious, how often did you tend to like attach to one band and travel with them through an entire tour, or would you kind of float around to other bands that you kind of intercepted while...
it was a little bit of both. Like Circa, I did a lot more stuff with for sure. And then a band called Our Last Night, I did a run with them. And then
I don't know.
If you know, she's big now, Halsey.
Yeah, nope, I don't think so. Although,
she's
for a second, it sounded familiar.
Yeah, she's done songs with like Justin Bieber, and she's like Billboard Top 100 and stuff. She blew up overnight. But I was the first person to photograph her and like did her Rolling Stone spread, stuff like that.
Whoa, amazing. That's incredible.
Yeah.
Nice. Good for you.
So that was a whole separate life I had, was music photography. There was a point where I was doing like probably 5 or 6 concerts a week.
Whoa. That's a good way to, I mean, there's not many things as difficult as concert photography. I feel like you're just such, maybe I'm wrong on that, but you're so at the mercy of whatever the lighting is. And
absolutely.
Like it would be rapidly evolving. I guess there's a pattern to it. Like I suppose a lot of productions,
if you're sticking with the same band, like, like, all right, the lighting's going to do this. And like at this peak of the song, he tends to go up front or like crowd surfs or whatever. So like, I guess that's the benefit of staying on tour with one band, is like, when those traits are coming up and you can nail that shot, easier than everybody else. It definitely teaches you how to work with natural light and like crazy lighting situations very quickly. Yeah,
for sure. Do you keep up with any of these musicians? Do you know how they're managing through this year? I actually literally had like an hour phone call with, I think his name is Culling. He's one of the guitarists from Circus Survive.
Yeah. Yep.
To try and get them, or Circus Survive has a Patreon, which is doing pretty well for the band, but split 4 or 5 ways or whatever, it's still not like great. So Colin is working on his own specific one, I guess for art. I suppose he does painting or some kind of
he does a lot of cool art stuff. Yeah.
So I was trying to give him some pointers through that, but I'm curious, have you kept up with any of these bands? Do you have any idea how they're surviving through this year? Any interesting
I've seen
approaches?
A couple of them have done like the drive-through shows or the drive-in movie theater shows.
I've heard of comedians doing that. It makes sense that a band would.
Exactly.
That's cool.
Yeah. So I think if you know that band Silverstein from like Canada, they did a drive-through run, and a couple others I can't remember offhand. And then there's been a lot of the like live stream Zoom concert type things.
Yeah.
Which I think it's not really the same feel. Like,
no. Although I will say, Anberlin, you mentioned them.
Yeah.
Their live stream I watched, I want to say it was May or something, and it was so good. It was awesome.
Oh,
it was so well done. I could not believe how they put this one
I think it's one of those things,
a production company, but holy
shit. If
like,
you put out the effort for a production company, I think it's gonna do leaps and bounds better than just throwing a camera up in the corner and Yeah.
Yeah, it was incredible.
And actually with Circa, I think Anthony, the singer, he just did his like acoustic solo thing. He did a live stream concert that way, and it was good production value, brought in like actual musicians, and it was cool. And he did like a lot of reimagined songs. So it was like, all right, this is your only chance to hear this song with a piano or like something like that.
Okay. Yeah. Smart guy. He's always been really clearly. Well, first of all, he seems impossibly creative. Like the amount of music writing he must do just as an individual.
And so driven. Yeah. I mean, he's in like 6 different bands at any given time.
Did you ever listen to Seosin? Like way back?
Yeah, of course.
That was probably his biggest thing to blow up at first. Yeah, Seosin was good times.
Yeah, and then he reunited with them and they came out with that new album and it was pretty good.
Yeah. You're right.
Super nostalgic. It was cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I love that Circa is still active in making new music. They must be one of the longest running bands. Like I can't think of many others that are actively still putting out, like have consistently new records,
and consistently good records too.
Yeah.
And I mean, they haven't really strayed from, they found that perfect way of progressing, but not straying too much from the sound that people love them for.
So that was my problem with Anne Berlin. As much as I love Anne Berlin, they evolved in a way that I was like, I like a couple songs, but this is no Cities or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, you'll get that when, you can't play the same things that you wrote in high school.
Totally. And they also, Anne Berlin, compared to Circa, had a lot of lineup changes, I think, in their guitarists and stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess, well, most people say, I guess it was just their second guitar player kept rotating for whatever reason. But
yeah,
I remember I was in my one Anne Berlin story. Well, I have a couple of them, but 2. So, and every time Christian, the lead singer, he does a lot of Instagram Live for some reason, or maybe he just started to this year because of the pandemic. But I keep trying to jump in and be like, hey, dude, I just want to tell you, do you remember me? Or I want to ask you, do you remember me? Because I highly doubt he would, but I was dating a girl in high school who had a friend who ran like a youth church group or something. And it was New Year's Eve and he wanted to bring in a band. He was in a semi-successful metal band. So he's really into music. And Anne Berlin literally had just signed to Tooth and Nail Records, but hadn't put out their first album. I think it's called Ready Fuels. Yeah. And, or no, Black Market, something, whatever the very first album was. But Ready Fuels was like the single from it.
Yeah.
They were super cheap and they were hired to play this New Year's show for literally like 2 dozen 10-year-olds at a church lock-in for New Year's. I was there with my girlfriend and then her friend who was like the youth pastor who put this on. And Anne Berlin pulls up and they're like, guys, last night we were staying somewhere overnight and our entire van got stolen. All of our equipment was gone. And so they were like, we can't play. But this guy who kind of hired them had his band's entire, it was a metal band, but they had their entire set of amps and drums and everything. So they just threw that together and played the show. And it was a turning point for me because not only were they not playing their own equipment, but this is like literally a bunch of 10-year-olds, New Year's Eve, and Anne Berlin is sitting there playing one of the most energetic, exciting shows I've ever seen in my freaking life. I was like, oh my God. This is how you do it. Like, it's not, for sure. It's not all like what you see once people are semi-established on tour. Like they start here, and it's so cool to see that. And I didn't really talk or get to know them very much, but literally like a year later, they had released their album and were starting to make some waves. But that same girlfriend worked for her university. Like, here's our $2,000 for the semester, hire entertainment for students.
Oh yeah.
So I was like, oh, get Anne Berlin. They were like $1,200 and they came to Farmville, Virginia, the middle of nowhere, Virginia, to play basically a show for me and my high school friends.
Yeah, exactly.
No one else. And then we had like dinner with them and stuff. And it was really, really fun to hang out. But
yeah, see, they need to know how much you were rooting for them early on.
In early days, man. Early days.
You were booking their gigs and everything.
Yeah, I'm the reason anyone in Virginia knew of them, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It was crazy. And then as much as they took off, they seemed to be right place, right time. I know they were able to like last minute start headlining a big tour that Further Seems Forever was supposed to headline, and they lost their singer. I think his name is Jason. It was the one after Chris Carrabba from Dashboard. Chris left.
Yeah.
They got this other guy, Jason. He left right before they were supposed to headline, and Amber Lynn was going to be like number 4 on the show, whatever. They weren't supposed to headline, but
bumped up
to the top, and that kind of propelled them into a lot more success, which I always love.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, they've always been fantastic.
But I worry. I can't even begin to think those bands that were in their formative years now in 2020, how many we were going to know and love and have.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then
exist in the world. And now that momentum it's
just crushed. Yeah.
It's so impossibly hard. You can't account for that, all the missed opportunities that were.
Well, and especially with no definitive timeline of when it's going back.
Yeah.
So it's not even like, all right, well, we just need to make this last until, March, and then we can play concerts again. We can, really make a big push for March and a full tour and stuff. But you have no idea. I mean, it could be March. It could be, March of 2022 when we have concerts again. Like, who knows? I
do hope that maybe after, whatever period of just everybody trying different solutions, whether it be Patreon or live shows that are live streamed, whatever, that hopefully there will be some consistent thread that bands can, some path that they can take to monetize and stay in existence.
Yeah.
I don't know, figure it out.
I mean, I think a lot of it is it's either going to be figuring out those live streams and getting some good production or uniqueness behind them, or maybe, drive-through concerts or drive-in concerts are the way of the future. Who knows? Yeah.
It'd be interesting to see if they could pull off. Did they tap into you go to a literal drive-in movie theater and the audio is incredible. It's not AM.
Fantastic.
You don't tune into the AM station. It's like
no
HD FM and it's incredible. Is that what they were able to do for these live shows? Or was it like roll your windows down and listen through the PA, the speakers from the stage?
I'm not 100% positive. I know it's been, even with the comedians, it's been like some will tap into the audio, some won't. Some will, project what's going on stage to all 3, movie screens, and it's like a cool amphitheater vibe. And so I think I guess it depends on how much money and production value you're bringing along with you.
Cool. Yeah, it'd be totally insane to think about that you would even need to know this, a year ago as like an audio guy, like, sound, whoever's working the boards at these live shows would have to like try and make mixes for cars.
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Car series, like,
where people can really notice any little flaw. It's not like
right. It's not like a live sound with, there's a good amount of forgiveness.
Absolutely. Especially in an enclosed venue that everything just reverberates, but
100%. I remember there was a band I was recording. It was a metal band called Hope at Hand. Is that what they're called? Yeah. They didn't get super huge or anything, but they were immensely talented. And I was one of the first people to ever record them. And I remember the little brother of the drummer, or the guitarist. He was an excellent drummer. He was just a little bro, just hanging out, like learning and everything. And he just could not understand. He couldn't understand why I had to do so many takes of everybody, because in their live shows, everything sounded perfect. But in the recording aspect, he couldn't draw the connection between like, well, now you're sort of like under a microphone in terms of your performance, and you're missing the ebb and flow of playing with 4 or 5 other people in real time. When it's just you to a click or just you to another pre-recorded part, it is not the same. And he just could not understand why it sounded perfect live, but recording it, we needed to do like dozens of takes.
That's funny.
Yeah. But it's a similar thing when you've got somebody mic'd up and then it's being remixed for a car. You're really under a microphone now. In terms
absolutely.
I mean, microphone.
Arguably, your car has the best sound system of anything. So
totally, 100%. Yeah, it's like a music box on wheels. I totally agree.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know a lot of like friends bands and stuff like that growing up. That was always the test, was, bring the mixes into the car and sit for an hour and listen to them over and over again, because that really let you know what's missing.
Car test is critical. And it was, I remember is such a battle, those days of you'd work hours and hours and hours mixing something on speakers. I had the foam everywhere in my room to try and kill the reflections and all that. A lot of mixes I did on these literal speakers that just sit here now.
Oh, nice.
But it would, hours spent, and you go to the car and be like, what is this bass? I never heard the bass is so loud. I didn't hear it at all in my bedroom. This sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you can almost get away with just mixing for AirPods or Apple headphones, and 90% of people,
Yeah,
it'll translate.
exactly.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Times have changed.
Yeah, speaking of Apple and stuff, you got the new Apple Silicon stuff, right?
I actually literally on air recording with another podcast episode. I was so excited. I opened my new MacBook Pro, and in my hurry, I guess, in ordering through the App Store, as soon as it was available for order, the M1 Silicon, I just went for the fully spec'd 13-inch MacBook Pro, the most expensive one, fully spec'd up, because I assumed that was going to be the Apple Silicon, but no, the Intel processors are still the most expensive fully spec'd MacBook Pro.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I opened it up and I'm looking at it and I'm like, I thought somebody had told me the M1 chips only had 2 Thunderbolt ports, but this one has 4. I guess they were wrong. That's great. I like 4 USB-C ports, whatever.
Yeah.
And no, it was the Intel. So it's like the second, it's cheaper, a little bit cheaper. And I don't know.
That's very interesting.
Yeah, why they arranged it in the store that way. And I'm kind of surprised that, it being Apple, that they even continue to offer the Intel chips. It seems like they would just scrub those away and make it all Apple Silicon in one.
Yeah, I mean, that's how they usually do, like, headphone jacks and stuff like that. Once they decide they're done with something, it's gone. Exactly.
It's sort of weird. And I'm looking at it right now on their website. Yeah, the Apple Silicon, they max out the cheaper 2, actually, $12.99 and $14.99 are the Apple Silicon. Once you get to $17.99 and $19.99, they're both still Intel. So I got to send it back.
Yeah, that's super interesting.
It's really annoying because now a month bumped on my on my shipping list. I get it like end of December or something crazy.
Oh yeah. You missed the rush.
It's okay. I'm actually very happy with my 13-inch, previous one that I bought last year.
That's what I have, and it does me just fine. It doesn't slow down. It doesn't. I mean,
it's a great
I was more excited, and I'm more waiting for when they move the Apple Silicon over to like the base model iMacs and stuff like that.
Yeah. And I keep trying to imagine like, okay, it's going to be cool to run iPad apps natively on Mac OS, but I don't really know which ones I'm going to do.
It's going to be super beneficial. Now.
Yeah. I'm sure developers will evolve that idea and create some really awesome things. But right now, I don't know. The only other thing I would love is a fanless MacBook Pro. I know the Air with the M1 Silicon is fanless, because I had one of my favorite computers for years was the one port MacBook, the non-Air, the non-Pro. It was just MacBook.
Yeah, I remember seeing you using that. I thought you were crazy at the time, but
yeah, it's an incredible machine. And one of the aspects, no one believes that I use that for like all my editing for years.
Yeah,
I could still use it, but they discontinued it with the most amount of internal hard drive space they ever allowed in a configuration was 500 gigabytes, and that was just, I need at least a terabyte at this point in life. And so I just stopped. I still own it, but I don't use it as much. Anyway, but one of my favorite aspects of using it was the fanless design. It's just super quiet for recording music, especially, or podcasts.
Oh yeah, I could see that being crucial.
Fans. Yeah. I loved it. And just the performance on it was pretty great for certain things, not like raw rendering of smart previews or exporting high-res files. Not so good. But once everything was pre-rendered to smart previews, Lightroom just flew on that thing. It still does.
Oh, yeah.
So I have a feeling the M1 chip will be similar. Some apps are going to be absolutely insane, and others are going to be sort of what you would be used to.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. At least until, like you said, people figure out clever ways to utilize the apps. And honestly, right now, like running Sidecar on my iPad is just as enjoyable.
So good. It's so great.
Yeah.
I love it. I actually bought a dedicated iPad Pro just to permanently have a Sidecar for my iMac. I bought it used, and it was the cheapest one I could possibly get, but I bought a dedicated one just because, it does.
I held off for so long, and then they came out with like the remake of the iPad Airs that support like Apple Pencil 2 and all that. So at the price point, it was just like, all right, let me just pick this up and see if it'll enhance my workflow. And it was night and day difference, like first time using it. So.
Yeah, there's like no lag, hardly at all, if at any. Do you do a lot of illustration work still? Do you use the iPad for that?
I've actually been like forcing myself to get back into drawing and painting through it. It's still an interesting experience because of like, I don't know, drawing on glass still feels a little different.
Sure.
But I think they make like some sort of skin I can put on it that feels more like paper. So I might try picking that up. I think it's actually called paper or something like that. So I might try picking that up, but Yeah, it's kind of forcing me, and I'm trying to do a mixed medium thing where I photograph some more conceptual stuff that I have and then paint or draw over top of it.
One idea that really stuck out and resonated with me was, what was it? It was an album cover for a band called From Indian Lakes. I think
Okay, yep.
Yeah, they're pretty, I think it's just one guy actually.
Yeah.
But he has a band that he tours with.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had this beautiful, cool portrait of a woman or something, and then like a streak or a couple streaks of paint, basically just a blob of paint over her face.
Yeah,
really,
exactly.
Yeah, really neat. Stuck out.
Yeah, there's another photographer on Instagram who's pretty well known for that. He shoots through like a lot of like textured glass, and then he'll do like the one streak over a face or something like that, and that's been pretty interesting to see. Yeah. But I'd probably go a little bit more elaborate and illustrate a little bit more, like, I don't know, faces and stuff like that.
Is this still just a nugget of an idea in your head, or have you had any experiments that people could check out?
I've done a couple experiments, but nothing with the iPad yet or anything digitally. It's just been a lot of printing my own photos and then literally painting over top of them.
Oh,
so, but yeah, hoping with the iPad and stuff, I can translate that so I can actually share things a little bit easier online.
Yeah, it's Nessa, my partner Nessa. She's basically in the last 2 years become full-time illustrator, part-time photographer. It's crazy, and all enabled by the iPad. I mean, she basically bought, or I got it for her for Christmas, the iPad with the original Apple Pencil. And it was growing pains at first. It was like not a wonderful experience for her, just because she hadn't illustrated in a while. But now she is deep. I think she still uses Sidecar mostly and mirrors her display with Photoshop. I think is her main driver for the app. Photoshop, and then Procreate, I think is the
I have Procreate. Yeah,
she really likes that. But
yeah,
there's still some
and I
stuff.
did the same thing. I think I'm still in that transition of growing pain stage with the illustration. So hopefully I get out of it like she did and dive into it. But yeah, I enjoy seeing her work all the time. I've been following her for a while.
Oh, really?
As well.
Cool.
Yeah.
She's working on this 100-day project, and it is absolutely insane. She scrolled back just last night and showed me the length of time, like last year, between basically when she would have started her 100-day project. Now the relative length of time and how much work she output last year was like this, and now it's like this. Like
exponential growth.
It's insane. I just don't understand how people. I've always felt kind of handicapped, for lack of a better word, as a photographer, because I have no ability whatsoever to picture anything in my mind like an illustration. I don't understand how people do that, even with a photo. Like when I see an idea, I'm just seeing it through my camera screen using live view mostly, and I iterate through there. I do not have a photo in my head. I have no idea in my mind of how.
See, I find that super surprising to hear from you, because your stuff seems so intentional, and like you just have all these crazy visions all the time, and you bust them out.
Well, yeah, but I might have like a framework of an idea in my head in terms of like something that I want to shoot through to try or whatever. But I kind of randomly pick a starting point. I can see how lighting is going to fall on my subject. So I'll position them just in real time without even my camera in my hand sometimes. And
of course,
start there. But then the actual moving from the framework into what becomes the actual picture is 100% iterative through the process of chimping through the back of my camera the whole time. And that's why mirrorless was such a godsend for me, because I was before mirrorless using live view, which was not a great experience on the earlier
not great at
cameras.
all.
The D4 I think was the first one you could kind of get away with it. I was manually focusing, recomposing, take the picture through live view. It was a mess, but it worked. Because at least idea wise I could iterate on something,
pre-visualize to an extent,
way faster. Yes. And now like it feels like nothing with mirrorless cameras. It's great.
What you see is what you get, even through the viewfinder, which is fantastic.
But I will say I still feel very it's frustrating, because I'll sit down on my computer and start pulling stuff up and realize retroactively, like, crap, I should have the idea that I had looking at the back of the screen now isn't what it should have been. Like, there's, I don't know if that's a muscle you can exercise or not. Cause I've been shooting as a photographer 10 years now. I still don't have an image in my head really before
I think it's one of those things that if it was probably a muscle you could exercise, you would have probably cracked the code on that one.
Seems like. I know it's a naturally gravitate to in terms of what's likely to work as a starting point and what's not. And it's just experimentation from there.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Most of my like single portraits or I guess technically conceptual stuff is usually pre-visualized with like a crude sketch at least.
How often does the end result track and align sort of with that sketch? Is it usually it plays out sort of the way you anticipate, or is it sometimes?
It really, I guess, depends on like
Depends.
the great grandiosity of the sketch. You know, if it involves like a lot of setup and like or a very specific location, then usually it'll waver a little bit because the chances of finding such an uber specific location is slim to none. But I mean, yeah, it really depends. Yeah. And that's not always the case. Sometimes, you know, I'll be at a location and see something and then it's like, oh, I know what could work here, and then kind of sketch based off of a location. So then that'll more directly mimic the sketch or the idea.
And the antiques and kind of objects you collect, do they generally work into sort of like as props that people interact with, or are they mostly sort of just setting the atmosphere and the scene?
It's a mixture of both. I mean, I don't ever buy anything that I don't intend to have either in the background or a primary part of the photograph. So everything that I own now is just stuff that I've used for shoots and just don't use anymore, or they're waiting around for the right day and time and person.
By the way, somebody commented in the live stream. We have 6 viewers, by the way.
Ooh.
But somebody did comment and say paper-like. It works wonderfully, and it's like writing on paper.
Yeah, I think that's the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Brand. Yeah.
So I'm going to look into that because that could be the gap bridger that I'm looking for.
With these antiques that you sort of collect over time, do you ever utilize any online sources for that and searching and discovering things, or do you prefer to do it in person? And it just...
Well, actually, just recently, I took on a job photographing for like a high-end auction house.
Wow. That sounds perfect for you.
Yeah, it's been kind of fun. It's a merging of worlds, and it's nice because I'm still behind the camera, but I'm not exercising the same part of my brain as I would for a portrait. So it doesn't fry me out like working in the fashion industry or anything like that I've done in the past. That tended to like fry me out, and then I wouldn't shoot outside of it or personally. So this is a nice, you know, in between where I can exercise a whole different part of my creativity and kind of like my more OCD side at work, and then come home and create thoroughly just for the point of creating.
That's important. It's nice. I feel the same about music. It's still exercising that creative muscle, but not in any way that relates to photography. So it kind of acts as a motivator, and it keeps me feeling sharp just in my process of thought.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Iterating an idea. Yeah.
And now like, that's where I come into, like, for me, it's super important to have a camera that is inspiring for personal use. Now, how do you feel on that? Like owning gear for something that's purely personal or fun to shoot with on like a trip as opposed to just a workhorse?
That obsessed. Yeah, I've got a shameful amount of gear that is this. You know, if we're taking a trip somewhere, I just take now more recently the Hasselblad, but
exactly.
A bunch. Now I don't shoot any film. None of it's film. Although I do have a lot of film cameras. They're
of course
decorative. Honestly, I don't actually use them for anything.
Well, and plus being a photographer, people love to just give you their old film camera.
Yep. I had a client send me a whole box last year. It's like, this is really sweet. They were actually his father's cameras. It's like, oh my God, this is
You're like, you don't want to hold on to these, like.
But I treat them respectfully, and they're gorgeous. But yes, I have. I love the kind of having a couple pieces of equipment that there's no pressure. Maybe I'll bring them on a wedding day if I get some downtime where I'm just like hanging out or whatever. I'll play around with a Leica or a Hasselblad or something like that. But or I've got an old speed graphic with an Aero Ektar lens, which is quite the beast. And that I still have some Polaroid film that I can shoot that on, and it's crazy cool. Anyway, I don't travel with that, but
no, a little impractical.
I love having stuff that is purely meant to be motivating and inspirational on a personal level, and most of that work never sees the light of day. It just sort of sits for myself, and yeah.
Well, I think it's super important, especially as a photographer, to like remember to take pictures of my life and surroundings and not just the pretty parts, and try to get myself in frame from time to time.
That's a good point. Yeah. If you're not careful, you can go years without a proper photo of yourself as a photographer. It's sort of
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like
a lot of photographers probably prefer that, but
yeah, I understand that to a degree, but it's like, especially when I worked in like the music heavily and stuff, I do regret not having more photos of me in these places or with these people and stuff like that. You know, being the one behind the lens is great and all until you're like, you want to show people it and you're like, well, here's a picture of like me sitting in the corner of the room, but you can't see me. You can see everybody else I was with.
Yeah, I'm curious more about your life on tour. Man, there's you have such an interesting history. I don't know which direction to take this, but
yeah, I kind of bounced around a little bit in the photo world to different things, and
fashion as well. You mentioned, was that something you did?
Yeah, for a brief period there. That was by far the worst part of photography.
The only fashion photographers I know, I was shocked at their knowledge of fashion, of like literally trends and styles and all this. And I was like, oh, so you're a really good photographer, but you're an expert in fashion. This is what makes you really successful in this industry. I don't know if you found that to be true or not, but
that could have been very well true, because that's probably why I wasn't successful in that industry. Because
yeah, it's like, you know what actually works well and what the designers are looking for, not just a pretty photo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like, that's
whereas me, my like focus is always the person's face, or like, you know, the lighting on them and stuff like that. And I could really, you know, the garments and stuff are great, but they kind of fall to the wayside.
Right. Yeah. Probably not what not anyone in fashion wants to hear.
Yeah. Not ideal for that.
Were you able to shoot much film? Was that something that was appreciated in that industry? Or did they want pretty rapid like turnaround with digital retouching and all that?
Definitely, like early on, it was just all digital, and no one wanted to be bothered with the cost or the time of film. But as I started to transition out of it and more towards like what I did now, I found some like smaller companies that that was the aesthetic they were actually looking for. And, you know, instead of just having to sit and replicate the film look on my computer, I was able to just shoot it on medium format and give them to them that way. So,
okay,
that was like, I worked with a couple different like lingerie companies, stuff like that like it kind of fit more into my style anyway, and that's where I found like success and happiness through, I guess you could technically describe it as fashion, because it was showcasing a product, but it's far more just kind of shooting what I would shoot anyway, but they happen to be wearing someone's piece.
What does your kind of schedule look like now? Do things just sort of surface randomly, or do you have like any type of path and direction for new work that comes up?
So this year has been interesting. It's actually been a pretty good year for me, all things considered. The job working for the auction house kind of transitioned to mainly just shooting from home, and they
just send you stuff.
Yeah,
$100,000 such and such.
Yeah, exactly. It was
wow.
From like March to June, that's exactly what it was. Okay. They gave me the company card and was like, set up whatever you need at home studio wise to shoot the same that you would in the office, and then we'll mail you stuff, and then when you're done shooting it, you mail it back, type of deal. Now it's more, I go in the office maybe once a week to photograph, and then I'm at home editing. Wow. And my hours are kind of, you know, make up. As long as the work's done, they're happy, they don't care. So cool. It alleviates me to travel and do whatever.
You know, I'm actually sort of shocked I haven't heard more about, or haven't come across more auction house photographers. That seems every city sort of has an auction house, and it would be such a, I mean, they probably make a lot of money consistently.
Absolutely.
It would make sense for every single one of them to have like a staff photographer.
I mean, it's surprising even being a part of it. The company I work for is actually pretty forward thinking with visuals and stuff like that. So
they have an Instagram or anything?
Yeah, they do social media stuff, and they kind of hired me on to actually spearhead and like redesign a studio and kind of focus on visuals a lot more than other companies as a way of standing out, which is worked out tremendously. So
yeah,
it seems like a no-brainer because we're creatives and photographers, so we know the importance of visual, but these people that are nowhere near the creative circuit have no idea.
Yeah, the few that I've gone to in my local market, I suppose, I mean, they say that auction is in the title, so I assume they're auction houses. I don't know. But it does seem sort of like this whole industry that you don't really become aware of until you're in your 50s or something.
Yeah.
I don't know how accurate that is. Or really rich, I suppose.
Well, I think that's the thing is you need to have that disposable income to afford the products. And then by the time you're at that point in life, you're probably older.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that they would be at least a decade behind on I'm waiting for you to like tell me that you do TikToks for them or something.
No.
Okay.
TikTok is a beast I have yet to figure out.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I'm hoping it stays more in the realm of videography. And I know there's a lot of successful photographers, but they're only successful because they have cool behind the scenes video of their photography, not because the core photos like really good or anything.
And a lot of like the younger photographies on that app seem to kind of just be doing the same thing as each other, and it just promotes repetition.
Yeah, well, it's sort of social media in general, in a lot of ways. Unfortunately, it's a lot of
not
of
to
benefits,
sound too much like an old man, but
I know. Yeah, somebody's get off my lawn. Yeah. Well, that's cool. So, do you think you'll stick it out for a while? Do you have any plans to kind of hit the road at any point again and do?
Yeah, so we do for the auction house. I do 3 to 4 auctions for them a year of like 3,000 items per auction. Yeah, so we just wrapped up one, so I have a lot more free time coming up than I normally would. So I'll probably be hitting the road.
Nice.
Is there a lot of couple weeks?
I'm just curious. You have an inventory of 3,000 items. How big the objects you're photographing? Are they just like any? Is one day you're working with a car, the next day you're working with like a stamp? Like how variety? Like
no cars or anything like that. It's a lot of like cards, like vintage baseball cards, stuff like that. And then most stuff is like tabletop sized.
It is. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, I was curious. Like,
very rarely do you get the oversized statue or something like that. And that is kind of like a weird deal with it when it comes in. But for the most part, everything's pretty standard.
Do they let you lean into any type of creative aspect to make something look more interesting or cooler than it may otherwise be? Or is it like, we need a certain template and then stamp and repeat until you're done?
for the most part, for like the actual images that'll be on the website and the catalog, they need to be kind of stamp and repeat. But the advertising aspect, they kind of let me run wild and do whatever I want to do with them. So
that's great.
So we've been diving into a lot of like creative flat lay stuff and playing with different textures and backgrounds and scenes, and then also diving into video pretty heavily, which is cool too.
Yeah, video sells. As far as advertising goes,
it's still a muscle that's like I'm not super confident about, but at least this gives me the opportunity to dive into it a little bit and kind of experiment and kind of get paid to learn.
Yeah, that's best situation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I don't foresee myself ever like diving too much into video and becoming a YouTuber or like primarily a videographer. It's just, I don't know, it's too different of a muscle for me, and I prefer the still image for sure.
Did you randomly find this auction job? I'm just curious how you ended up, like your path to it. Yeah,
so it was, I think I'm going on 2 years in March now there. So about that time, it had been a while since I had worked a steady job, and I was kind of missing that steady income and security, and kind of wanted to set some roots and be home for a while. So put the resume out, and they reached out a couple months later, and I was pretty much hired on the spot in the interview. So
it is a different feeling. I've only had it recently due to Patreon stuff, but having a predictable income, while having a creative job is so great. It's so bizarre too, because it's like,
of course,
not supposed to be like this, but sort of the power of the internet enables so many great things. And there's something to be said for, I don't know, part of me does wonder if a lot of artists or creative type people, the constant struggle of like, I don't know where my next paycheck coming from. I wonder how much of that struggle informs the creative output in a positive way. Like
of course,
because a lot of artists can be lazy, and if they did have a salary job or a predictable income, I wonder how much great art wouldn't come to be as a result of that.
For sure.
I'm curious how you could possibly.
I mean, I tend to overload my plate in general, because if I don't, I feel very stagnant and like I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
So it kind of helps me a little bit, actually, and because it doesn't exercise the same side of my brain as the portraits I do and stuff. It's a good balance. It gives me like you said, the stability of the income. So I'm not super reliant on hunting down and taking every little job that comes my way. And I can definitely be a lot more picky when it comes to, what weddings I'll take on or what clients I'll take on as far as portraits, and also to focus on personal creative projects. Like I'm trying to release a book early next spring, like a coffee table book of all my conceptual stuff. So it's given me a lot more time to focus on that thoroughly, and the financial to, back it and publish it myself, as opposed to bending to someone else's vision of my creative process.
Amazing. How's the book process coming along? Do you have any spreads or previews anywhere yet, or is it still?
No, I'm still in early stages. I think we settled on a cover, and most of the content, there's still specific images I'm waiting for snow to be on the ground to capture.
Oh, okay.
That I want to incorporate into the
book on this, or?
So I'm in talks with a couple different galleries and a small publishing house of like representing me on it. So the biggest thing is I want to design the whole thing the way I want it. And then if they're on board for that, then it's something that can work. And if not, then I'd rather just do it myself.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah. So it should be good. I think it's going to be called Hometown, and it's just images based around where I live. I wanted my first book to kind of be a direct reflection of me.
And portrait stuff, or kind of.
Yeah, there's going to be a good amount of portraits and some self-portraits in there, which is also very new for me. That started during the pandemic and all that. And then hopefully some illustrations on top of the portraits, and then a couple writings.
Self-portraits on film, by chance?
Yes.
Wow. Nice. Impressive.
It's a different animal, setting focus using, a hat or something, and then setting a 15-second timer and kind of running and trying to get into the way that you want to be. Or it's interesting. It's fun though. It's new, and I like to push myself that way.
I can't hardly even relate. Yeah, I've only done 2 self-portraits, I think, and I was looking into a mirror for both of them because I was like, I don't know, it's the easiest way I can do it. I'm going to use mirrors. I can't even imagine setting the timer, running into position, moving the helmet or the hat, and then putting yourself there.
Yeah, it's interesting, but it solves the problem of one, not having any pictures of myself to document, me growing, and also it's kind of freeing in the fact that it all relies on me.
Yeah, I can definitely relate with that. My favorite projects are ones where I have complete creative control and it all kind of rests on my shoulders. But I've had to force myself to learn how to collaborate with other people, because some people know more than I do. Most people know more than I do. Yeah. And so you need to learn how to trust and lean into that to some degree. At least I do.
Absolutely.
I'm good at that. But, and speaking of which, with your kind of portrait work, how do you go about finding subjects? Do you mostly photograph friends or just people you know in life already? Or do you ever seek people out just randomly? Or
so it started mainly with friends and family and stuff like that, people that you're close to and you already feel comfortable with. And then as it's grown and my social media following's grown and stuff like that, you kind of get people that reach out that enjoy it and stuff like that. And then it depends. If I have a very specific look or image I'm going for, then I'll reach out to whoever I picture in that photo. And if it works out, it works out.
It's nice. It's cool how social media can sometimes feel like a superpower. Once you reach a certain volume, you're just I need this person that looks like this, that can do this.
Exactly.
Anybody interested? And then you're like, oh, great. I found it.
Yeah. So that is very nice. I'll say that for sure. As negative as social media can be from time to time, that part is fantastic. And one of the main reasons I got into photography was to just interact with different creatives and meet new people. And for that, it's been fantastic too.
Yeah. I unfortunately I've hit a full stop reverse course on that though. Earlier this year, I literally muted everybody. I didn't unfollow anybody, but I set up a macro recording to batch mute everyone to take a more proactive.
No, I understand that for sure, especially with Instagram just not giving you direct access to curating your algorithm the way you want it.
Yes. Yeah. It's ridiculous. whatever. We don't have to get into that, but
yeah,
everyone
exactly.
struggles. I mean, that is a
Yeah.
thing. I wish they would at least give everyone the ability to have more of a direct control instead of letting the app decide for you what you're going to see.
Exactly. If you're not going to give it to us chronologically, like when you started, and you are going to curate an algorithm, at least give us the opportunity to control that of who we want to see.
Yeah, 100%.
But I guess, that doesn't pay ad revenue. So
no, it doesn't. Yeah, doesn't make that money. And as somebody who does a lot of advertising myself, I'm having so much fun with ads. Like the ad creative is an art unto itself. It's kind of fun.
Oh yeah.
It's really addicting. But here I am like spending a lot of money on various ads, and I'm just like, but I'm also kind of enjoying the creative process of making the ad. How weird is this?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a good way to go about it, and actually just, hey, if this is the way of the world, let me dive into it and at least have fun with it. Yeah. And I mean, I do see your advertising all over the place, so clearly it works.
Oh, really? That's cool.
Yeah.
I have no idea. All I see are the raw numbers of like, this is how many people see it, and this is how many engaged, and that's it. But I never know who those people are or how much I'm annoying them or not. Although I do see the frequency rate.
You tend to pop up in my feed quite a bit now. I mean, it's probably because I follow a bunch of photographers and they know that's the way to get me. But yeah.
Sorry about that. I apologize.
No. It's all good. You make good content, so I don't care.
Did you see one of my more recent ads was literally, this is going to cost me 10 cents.
Yeah.
If you tap it. I was proud of that.
That's a fantastic one. And I just watched your review on that Zeiss camera right before we started recording.
Oh, really? It was a long one. And when I hit export on, I was like, shit, nobody's going to watch this whole thing.
Now, see, I tend to try to find the longer ones because I just consume content at such a crazy rate while I'm editing and stuff. So,
any questions, any thoughts or feedback from me, criticism about the review?
It seems like a crazy camera. It definitely seems like the camera of the future. I do wish they added the ability to have like a real-time LUT of your preset.
Yeah.
That would be I think that's the next step in camera evolution.
Totally agree. I mean, it already exists for videographers. Like a lot of these external recording monitors, you just throw on your LUT and you're good. So it's, I think something they could still push out in a firmware update. I'm just still shocked. This is Zeiss's first like digital camera, and it's as good as it is. It's got a lot of problems, but holy shit, for a first run, like
you would expect it to be kind of garbage.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I'm very impressed. Very, very impressed. The price point is
another
also
thing
obscene,
but that's also just
Zeiss
getting their feet wet. Yeah. And Zeiss's price points are always astronomical. So
yeah, exactly.
I mean, with good reason with their lenses, but it's still kind of crazy.
Well, see, that's the thing I didn't appreciate. And I was talking to Ryan Muirhead about it. Like the 35 millimeter focal length is not my jam normally. I just don't like it. But if I had to pick one lens fixed to the camera that I could never interchange, I suppose I would choose 35 because it's just wide enough that you can go wide and just tight enough that you can get close in the internet.
Yeah, it's that perfect in between, but it's also kind of boring because it is that in between.
Yeah. But the f2.0 is the thing I was really like, man, I wish it was a 1.4. Like, give me something, that really expands my palette.
Yeah, if you're only going to give me one lens, give me something with,
But Zeiss at 2.0 is otherworldly. It's I think the sharpness and the bokeh rendering, of course, and all that, but it's just, it has a quality. It really has a 3D pop to it that is, you can't really even articulate. I don't have the capacity to describe what I love about it so much, but man, it looks great even at 2.0. I don't feel like I'm missing anything.
Yeah.
It's an interesting camera though overall.
I like the internal storage. I think is a good way to go.
Agreed. Yeah.
Especially for the price points of cameras now and how cheap fast SSD storage can be. Like we should be able to pick up a Sony body with 2 terabytes of storage in it, no problem,
and never have to really worry about running it out or anything. The great thing, what won me over about the Zeiss in particular, was the fact that I'd been shooting on it for like 4 or 5 days and realized I had yet to even plug it into my computer to transfer images. Just as I'm shooting, I was always on home Wi-Fi, so it was a fast enough transfer speed and stuff. But as I was shooting and stuff was syncing to the Lightroom mobile app, those were syncing just as they should. And as long as I guess I never needed to like sit down and start working on it right away on my computer.
Yeah,
they would
that's
just
true.
auto-populate. I would sit down on my iMac, later in the day, and boom, there they are. Whenever I'd have the
Now, did you find yourself actually editing in the Lightroom app, or kind of just throwing a preset on it and exporting?
definitely did some editing, but here's the thing that I am most annoyed about. I mentioned it in the review, but I don't think I stressed how stupid this is. Like, the screen is not calibrated. The color temperature is way off.
Yeah, I remember you saying
It's
that. And it's
super
like,
yellow.
well, you expect me to edit here, but not have a color accurate screen.
I do not trust what it looks like on the back of that screen. And so it's like, so you kind of have to trust your preset. Hopefully you've got some baseline that you start with, that you kind of know that you can trust where it lands if you wanted to do exporting. And it's got Instagram built into it, so you can post directly from the camera.
Okay. It's all interesting features. Yeah. Fascinating where the world's going. I'm curious to see what the next iteration of cameras, the next full redo has in store for us.
I hope that it's the entire interface, the software aspect of the camera, whether it be from Canon, Nikon. I hope that it's built on something like Android. I would prefer iOS, but I don't think there's any hope of that.
Apple will never open up those floodgates.
Never. But I mean, maybe. I know Phil Schiller, one of Apple's senior VPs, loves Canon as a company and is really an avid photographer himself. So maybe I could sort of, I don't know.
It would be awesome. I would love that.
Johnny Ive did a one-off camera with Leica for auction for some organization. So they have flirted with these and the iPhone is mostly a camera now more than anything else.
Oh,
absolutely. And then a soul-sucking social media machine. But but on a hardware level, it's mostly a camera, and it's crazy. But I would love to see Canon just say, you know what? We've used the same software since literally the initial launch of our first digital camera. It's time to RIP that, and we're just going to make an app interface with a unique version of Android running. You would also get so much better iteration of features and new tweaks instead of having to do this firmware crap with an SD card, It's
which makes no sense.
Why are we still?
And every time I do it, I feel like I have to go on a website and read how to do it the right way.
Yeah.
And
and half the time, no meaningful features really come to light. It's
they add support for 20 languages or something, and you're like, all right,
cool. Yeah, this helps for that weird region of South Korea I'm learning, of course.
Yeah.
No, it's nothing happens, and if they were able to go the route of Zeiss, and that's where I'm curious to look back a year later from now and see if Zeiss is able to embrace the fact that it's all running on Android and make meaningful feature changes.
Absolutely.
That $6,000 starts to become justified when suddenly it's doing meaningful stuff that it wasn't when I bought it. It's like a Tesla. The amount of features they rolled out since the initial launch of something like the Model 3 to what it is now, they are rolling out meaningful features that traditionally weren't possible.
Camera companies did that would be game changing.
Totally. Yeah.
Because it would but I mean, I guess it would cannibalize physical sales to a degree, but it would be nice to see them,
Well, that's why they charge double.
Yeah.
That's why it's a $6,000 camera instead of a $3,000,
exactly.
right? I mean, that's where you can make up the money.
Yeah.
If you play the game right, you make all that up in software and then some. Because if you release new hardware, people are
that's the thing too. Even with my Sony or Fuji, if they initiated a firmware update that was literally camera alterating, I don't think I would mind putting out $50 for it or something like that.
Agreed. Yeah. And they're not capitalizing on any of that right now.
No,
they do
not
a good
at
job
all.
in hardware with lenses, but it stops there for the most part. Unless they
it's
issue a new
Sony kind of flirted with it with their App Store on the first iteration, but then they totally cannibalized it and got rid of it. So
and it was horrible.
Yeah, it was terribly set up.
I tried to install something for double exposures, and it was like, what?
Yeah, I did the same thing, and it didn't work anywhere near as good as the Canons I was used to using, and But there was the promise there for a second, and then they just completely cannibalized it and didn't sink any R&D into it, and you're like...
Well, and they're huge companies that don't want to, I think, be beholden to a company like Adobe as sort of like the Lightroom thing. But I think they could do it without... maybe they don't want to be beholden to Google. Maybe that's
true.
I don't know, because once you make that jump, you are kind of under the umbrella of something another company. But I think the writing's on the wall as far as still photos or still cameras go.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I love about the Fuji system is they implemented all their film emulations built right into the camera. And if you shoot in them, it'll actually transfer over directly to Lightroom. So then now I'm editing a raw file based off of one of their film simulations. So now it's not for everybody, but if you enjoy the way, their films render greens or something like that, and you usually spend hours in Lightroom trying to replicate that, it's something that's happening automatically. And for me, it's cut down on editing drastically.
Yeah, somebody's asking in the live stream if I use this. It's called the L16 camera. I can't remember exactly who made it. Maybe it was Lytro or somebody.
Okay.
Did you ever see it? It's a giant rectangle and it's got like 16
with all the lenses on it. Yeah.
And it's the worst thing ever.
You can
Great
adjust
concept.
the depth afterwards.
But it's horrible. I have not. So whoever's asking, I have not. I still have it somewhere. Maybe I should see if I'm sure they made some software updates, but it was bad. Great concept. But Apple and Google have proven they can do it computationally with like one lens.
Yeah, I was gonna. Yeah, and even that, it's kind of like LiDAR in general in cameras have kind of rendered that useless.
Totally. Did you update to the new iPhone, the 12?
Yeah, Max? I have the 12 Pro Max because I just like big phones. So
yeah,
and it's crazy.
It is. The low light, I think, is literally now better than DSLRs. And I can't remember. I don't know if I've ever actually tested the low light feature. Does it only output JPEG? Do you know if it'll do the new Apple Pro RAW with the low light, long exposure stacking? I'm
not positive. I know the new Apple Pro RAW isn't available until the next update.
Oh, that's right. If you're in the beta program, I think you can get access to it now. But you have to be a developer or something. Gotcha.
And I normally am in the beta program, but sometimes it kind of screws with my apps a little bit too much. So
yeah,
once the new full release of the software comes out, I usually get out of the beta program until next June when they initiate it again.
Oh, did you ever say, are you planning on buying an M1 yourself, or are you going to hold off until it iterates to a version 2?
I think I'm holding off until they do a full redesign of the iMac.
Oh, okay. You're going to wait.
Yeah, I want to see them do an edge-to-edge display and maybe get rid of the chin at the bottom. And I'm just curious to see where they're going to go with, the actual redesign of the iMac, because I have a feeling it's probably coming in the next year or two.
Yeah, I suppose you're right. The iMac Pro was sort of as quick as they could response to doing something pro. It wasn't but 2-3 years ago that people were freaking out that Apple had abandoned pro users. It wasn't that long ago.
Exactly.
And Apple seemed to
and now they have pro everything.
Yeah, they really trying to stress this iPhone is pro now. We're good. It's okay. But I love my iMac Pro. I've got the big gray one. I think it was freaking $5,000, even though I bought it used. I didn't get it
of course.
At launch, but I agree. I could see an edge-to-edge display, and a meaningful webcam update would be amazing. Some computational photography into, now more than ever, they would just be raking it in if people could get shallow depth of field, like whatever you've got on your display here, built into a webcam on a freaking computer. They basically have that built into the iPhone. How is it not in their Macs yet?
And I was also kind of shocked with the iPhone, especially because it has LiDAR now, that they didn't implement this depth of field emulation throughout the video function of the phone.
I'm sure that's coming. Has to be.
I think it's their next holdout for either next year's phones or something like that as a big feature, but they probably won't initiate it through firmware because they want you to buy the next phone. But
of course,
yeah.
I can't wait for that though. I want the focus and the emphasis to shift to video more than photo.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sick of them being like, this is the best camera ever.
Well, and especially being a photographer, it's I can get the depth of field with my nice camera, but video wise, it'd be so nice to shoot video on my iPhone in 4K. And have that depth of field.
Yep. But the natural rendering is kind of nice for close-up stuff.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's surprising.
If you're doing portrait length stuff, it actually does render out a nice background. But
have you ever played with any of these apps that... oh, that's funny. I need to turn off these comments. People are talking about the audio is out of sync on the live stream. This is why it doesn't matter. What was I going to say? Have you played around with any of these apps that capture every photo you take from all 3 cameras at the same time, and gives you just
I tried I think it's Imac Pro does the you can do the front facing camera and one of the rear cameras at the same time, and I was trying to play around with it a little bit, trying to do some video work when I ride the motorcycle around and stuff like that. And it seems to work surprisingly well.
Yeah.
But
that's the next frontier for me is like the assumption that every photo you take, you can make whatever focal length you want, which is that's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think that's the next frontier. Like, why you only have one lens? What, you don't have 4 lenses?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
at all at the same time, recording everything equally. Like, why not?
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah, it seems like a no-brainer.
Yeah, it should head that direction. I don't know what that says about composition. Like, where should you assume your composition at that rate? But I don't know. It also solves your problem of not having photos of yourself, because if every picture you take also snaps a front-facing camera.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey,
yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah.
Here's my face looking at the back of the screen like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure those will be fantastic photos to show later in life.
But, given another 5-10 years, and with the cell phone cameras being so ahead in terms of what they're able to do computationally compared to DSLR, I don't know. I could see that being the final nail in the coffin for traditional cameras with one lens being attached.
Think so.
Like the fact that you can capture everything from 4 different perspectives all at once, on top of it looking basically the same.
Yeah, especially if there's no quality, disconnect, then it makes no sense, because I can bring this thing in my pocket or I can lug around a giant camera.
But I will say, I would love to see Apple make like a meaningful case or something that has a more comfortable. I wouldn't want to shoot like a wedding with an iPhone, no matter how good it was, because it's so.
I think it was like the original 11 Pro or something like that. They had the one case that actually had a dedicated shutter on it, which was like a step in the right direction, but they could have emphasized it a little bit more.
Something with a hot shoe for flash. Or something would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, especially now, I think doesn't Profoto make a flash that you can sync to your, which is crazy, but
it works. It's
it looks
funky,
fantastic,
but it works.
But yeah. I mean, you're getting actual flash results from your cell phone, which is interesting.
Yeah. And the other thing that is kind of a bummer, but I guess eventually you just grow out of it, is you get no tactile feedback of the shutter. You don't get that feel and responsiveness of the lens focusing and all of that kind of visceral, intuitive, physicality that comes with photography. That is an important part of, I think, the end result in terms of timing and all that.
Absolutely.
It's just
and I think like
removed, but
the sounds alone really, that was like one of the things I liked least about the Sony cameras is the shutter just sounds awful.
Yeah. The newer ones that I tried, I feel like they improved on. I don't know if by accident. I don't know if they do that just as a consequence of evolving the technology, or if they're purposely, intentionally trying to make
listening
the shutter
to
sound
people's
better.
complaints. And
I would hope.
I would hope so as well. I mean, that's one of the things I actually love most about the Fuji is it has such a clunky, like real shutter.
Does it?
Feels
do you have
like
it near
a film
you right now? Do you have it?
I do. I got it right here.
Get that on.
Let's see here. I don't know if it's picking that up.
Especially that second half.
Yeah.
Feels like something's progressing.
It's a little bit more tactile. Yeah. And
and just curious, what's the frame rate? Is that max frame rate? Can you go?
It's like 3 frames per second, or like I think maybe 5 tops if you have like live view. But then it does that weird warp because it takes so long for the sensor to render. I think you played around with your Hasselblad had that weird distortion effect when you're using the electronic shutter. Yeah. Yeah, it suffers from that just as bad. It's
the sensor then. Yeah, what a bummer. Yeah, they need to speed things up. Or it's probably the processing of the data.
That's what I think it is.
Off the sensor, yeah.
Because apparently the GFX 100 version, which has a much faster processor, suffers from that far less.
Oh, good.
So I think they're actively working on it, but it does lend some weird results if you don't realize your electronic shutter is enabled.
Yes. Very, very weird. And sometimes flattering, usually not. It's usually the wrong direction. Yeah, it's I did 2 entire sessions with electronic shutter and the 58 Nikon 1.2. And I was so frustrating, only because, I would tell my subjects, like, you have to, no sudden movements, don't move up too much. But people's natural chemistry and interaction with one another, you don't want to tell them to be statues. You can't.
No, not at all.
Stiff, but any type of movement would really start to be a problem. I would see maybe the whole frame I was steady and everything was aligned fine, but like their bottom leg would have like
something's
a
like weirdly
Gumby leg. It's like, dang, you guys really
I
have
can't
to
deliver
not
that.
No. Or you could kind of maybe nudge it in post, but then it's like work you don't want to have to be doing. So
no, yeah, exactly. Now, where do you think it's going? Like, I know you mentioned like machine learning and stuff like that. Would you be okay with machine learning on your workhorse camera?
I think so. I don't know why. It depends on what it's doing. If it's literally changing expressions or something, probably not. I don't think I would want that at all.
What about like the AI composition that they've been promoting lately and stuff like that, where it auto comps and stuff like that? That to me is a little weird.
It is weird, and I don't think I would. I don't know, man. It's scary because anything I try and make a case for, I think you could equally make a case opposite. So I really don't know. Because a lot of the work, a lot of times in creative work, I find when I do have a grasp of the limits and the capabilities of the camera, I can lean on a lot of the work the camera is doing. Something as simple as like auto ISO, you can sort of conceptualize as being machine learning, right? It's dialed into a meter and it's doing a lot of, it removes so much headroom in the decision making that now I've got this higher starting point in my creative process to work from. So I can start in a more developed creative space. So as awkward as it is to think like, oh, the camera can start compensating for composition, literally.
Yeah.
Now I can focus more on lighting. But eventually, cameras will probably be able to render light. I mean, they already kind of do, not in a great way, but it's starting down that path.
It's there.
So I don't know. I have to see it in practice. I'm not against it all, but I think a lot of it's going to, you don't want to lose your sense of self either and just have the camera take over because eventually before you know it, like you're stuck into a pattern or a principled way of shooting that now you rely on the camera doing something for you and you can't live without it. That's a bad thing. And then it also makes it really hard to pivot into a new direction for your work if you don't know how you got to where you are. So
exactly.
It's crazy. I don't know what to expect and make of it all.
Now, have you played around with any of the programs like the Luminar or the Photoshop updates or anything like that?
Yeah, the neural filters on Photoshop are interesting. They're hilarious more than anything.
They are hilarious. Yeah.
Especially when somebody like has their lips closed and you try and make them do an expression where it adds teeth.
Yeah,
artificially.
Which is so weird.
Now we're making assumptions about what this person's teeth look like. I don't like
exactly.
This.
Yeah. Or it's just giving everybody, ultra perfect teeth and then that's the way they're going to want to see themselves forever.
100%. And I've talked about this on other podcast episodes. The native, Apple was guilty of this themselves. The native, without you knowing it, output of what was being captured would smooth your skin or make you look a little more flattering than what is reality. And so people's perception of how they actually look or how they photograph, at least, was being altered on in a real psychological way. There's a disconnect between how they actually look. And that's scary to me because now we're living in two realities, physical and digital.
Absolutely. It's like, it's even the Fuji actually has a setting in it for skin smoothing to shoot in real time and applies it to the raw file.
Wow. Oh, dang.
And it works surprisingly well.
Huh. But
you don't get that.
Follow that to its
shiny,
logical extreme. 20 years down the line, and you're a really old person, but you still look like half your age. But now your historical record of you existing and how you actually looked when you were young
altered.
Is completely obscured. It's lost. And that sucks in some ways.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I don't know that you can fight
I think
it,
it's. Yeah, I don't think you can. I hope it just becomes more of a time and place thing. I think. There's times where you want your skin to look perfect, but I think as far as like documenting your life and stuff like that, it should look as real as possible.
Yeah, agreed. It's interesting.
I'm more curious and hopeful that they introduce, I would like to see LiDAR come over to our professional cameras for autofocusing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think also with if they could find out a way to store depth map data in with your image and then you can alter focus post photo.
Well, LiDAR would solve that, right?
Yeah, I think it would
be. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen any. I'm trying to think of any.
And then also it would be interesting because then it would be like, well, would there even really be a need aside from light gathering capabilities of crazy fast, heavy lenses? If I can shoot an f4 lens, but then go home and with the depth map, it perfectly mimics a 1.2 or an f1 or a medium format or whatever.
Ooh, I hadn't thought about that. The fact that you could shoot with an incredibly lightweight pancake lens, basically, and just get the basics of everything. And yeah, that's interesting. I would assume, I don't know what the LiDAR.
Yeah, I don't know what its limitations
modules,
or any of that is, but that's just where my brain goes when it starts getting introduced for autofocusing and stuff like that.
It's going to have to, because LiDAR is also, it seems to be a critical component of AR, which is clearly where the next big, I think, leap is going to be. It's not going to be VR. It's certainly going to be AR, if not permanently AR. With some sort of
AR is just far more practical than VR.
Yeah, I could see it. I think we should all take a look around and embrace the fact that we see the world the way we do right now, because I do believe we'll reach a point where, without some sort of digital overlay in your everyday world of the life, I think that will be normal. I think you will always have some sort of digital experience and overlay of what's occurring around you.
Oh yeah, I think so for sure.
Yeah.
And I think it's coming sooner than anybody even imagines.
Agreed. And the utility of, it's just like with phones, the utility of having a phone that, yes, you know that it's too addicting in some ways and that you need to limit your access, but also it has Google Maps. So it's always going to be with you when you leave the house because it has Google Maps or something so useful. AR is going to be the exact same thing. It's
for sure.
Be direction oriented and all that. And it's,
well, even if it's in your car and you can see the navigation in real time displayed on your windshield, that's
way safer than having to look down at the screen. Yeah.
Yeah.
But LiDAR, I think, is going to be a big part of what they're able to do with data collection and then reinterpret it with some interactive AR.
Oh yeah, because even the fact that I can pull up my phone and create a true to life depth map image and like walk around 3D model of my room in 10 minutes. It's wild.
It's exciting, but my fear, and I'm sure Black Mirror, they certainly have touched on this, is the implications of really the marrying of social media now plastered over your entire visual experience. And that person that you see walking toward you, there's their name with their profile of 100,000 followers. Here's another person with 10,000 followers. And it's just ever present in your awareness of everyone around you.
And I don't think that's unrealistic at all.
And it's terrifying because it's gonna, because we're instinctual humans, it's going to influence us whether we want it to or not. No matter how mindful you are of, this person
you're going to tend to go talk to the guy with 100,000 followers. Yeah.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
I don't see how that leads to anything good, honestly, but
no, I don't. But I mean, who knows?
I don't know.
Now, do you still edit in VR with your Lightroom catalog?
I do. Only the vast majority is just culling, and it actually has been great being kind of at home more than ever now, just to change up the environment a bit and everything. 100%. Yeah. Immerse VR. Immersed? I can't remember the exact company name, but they have the best experience.
How is the color accuracy on that and stuff like that? Is it not great, or?
It's getting better. I just bought the Quest 2. I think it's the official name, whatever the latest Quest iteration is, and it is better.
Yeah.
The pixelation isn't quite, it's not, you still get the screen door sort of effect.
You're kind of very aware you're looking at a screen.
Yeah. But the color accuracy is not horrible, and you can adjust it. You can adjust for it. It's not science perfect. I haven't taken like a calibration spider and put it up to my goggle or anything, but you can get a pretty close approximation just with some of the manual controls. I mostly use it for culling though, because I already hate culling and having a fun
way of going about it.
Yeah, exactly. And
that's my biggest downfall too, is the culling is just so monotonous.
Yeah. It's pretty cool. And now I'm just waiting and looking for somebody to like jump in with me, because you can do like basically chat room style VR experiences where you can see their screen because it's digitally represented what they're looking at in the room if you want it to be, and they can see yours. So you can actually collaborate in real time, seeing your monitors.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It's great. And there's another friend of mine who's a photographer. What is the app? Alt space. Dang it. Let me see if I can find it. Literally, like every night, she's in this virtual chat room with people just hanging out. It's called, and they're talking like politics, and it's called Alt. I don't know. But she believes it's the future. She's like, yeah, why are you not already here, Sam? This is, you make your avatar and then you just meet people and you're making these actual relationships. It's social media all over again, but in VR. It's
fascinating, but yeah, it is also terrifying. Like, I don't know. It seems like a lot of people could get stuck down that rabbit hole and it becomes their real life.
I wonder if we're not already in that state where there are two realities. One, real physical reality with human interactions, where it's somebody's primary way of being. And then another is literal, probably more in younger kids now. Their primary identity is their online virtual identity, not their...
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, we must already be living in that state. And so you're getting two literal identities now, like diverging.
Yeah.
Two separate things. Thanks, Siri. Triggering all my mind. So now you have this entire section of society that's going down the digital reality and identity and perception of their place in the world. And another set, probably a smaller set now, that actually their primary sense of identity is anchored in existence and what they experience. So but I don't know what that leads to. It seems like that would lead to a lot of conflict, but maybe they will ultimately be so unaware of themselves that it won't even matter.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? And especially I think this year in general, with being so locked into our own homes and stuff like that, I think your online persona has been almost more prevalent and important during this year. And I think you can change it so drastically compared to what is reality. It's scary.
It is, but I could also see the argument that, at least given this year and the context of a pandemic, and it's like a scary thing, that it actually has been better for people's mental health to be able to sustain even digitally, some connection to the outside world in a way that's not just like the radio or TV. But I don't know if that actually genuinely helps like someone's mental state in a healthy way. Does it really help if you're only consuming and not actually outputting like this, like putting yourself like I think that's the key, is you need to
you definitely have to have the ebb and flow. The output I think helps quite a bit, and I think more stuff like this of people chatting I think is the key.
100%.
And
so for you, have you done anything other than like what we're doing now with the podcast? Do you do any other?
No, I mean, I've been looking into a bunch of different options as far as like if I want to go down the YouTube rabbit hole. I think I would kind of lean more towards doing stuff like this, of just interviewing and just like hanging out and talking with people. And then maybe if I add it to a YouTube page or something like that, I think that would be something I'm looking into for sure, especially as, we're on the verge now, it seems like, of more lockdowns, especially up here. So I think it's a good way to keep my sanity and keep interacting with people and hopefully meet new people along the way. I mean, like, this is great. Like, we probably never would have talked otherwise. So.
Exactly. Yeah. I often think about, I'm suddenly self-aware. I say the word I quite often. I apologize. But there it is again. Dang it. I often think about what my life would be like without the internet. I was a disaster really growing up in terms of trying to get like simple fundamental things like paying your bills or balancing your checkbook, all of that stuff. If the internet didn't come along, I have no doubt I would be flipping burgers, fast food or something. I agree completely.
I'd be probably in the exact same boat. It's helped out so much with navigating the world
and creating and having connections with people that never
absolutely.
Existed.
And then it's just you realize like you kind of get the world smaller than you think mentality a lot of the times, because there's so many times where I interact and am friends with someone, and then someone else knows them, and then next thing you know, you have friends all around the country. And it's all,
then the problem is like just trying to be nice and not, and keeping straight who's who and how you know them and all that.
Exactly.
Like, it's too good of a situation. I know people more by their profile picture and their username than I do their actual face, which, maybe absolutely. That is exposing just to myself that my online identity actually does take priority over my real life identity.
I mean,
I don't like that.
I guess it's nice for us because we both use our names. So like, at least it's like a real name, connected to a real face. But there's definitely so many people where it's like, you try to explain them to someone and you just give a username or something like that. And you're like, man, I kind of feel shitty for that I can't remember your real name, but I remember your Instagram handle. But
yeah, it's nothing personal.
It's like, well, when we interact in, only on Instagram through messages or something like that, that's the only name that I see all day. So of course that's what I interact with.
Yeah. It's a struggle to, fight the pronunciation of things as well. I think, didn't we start? I was just clarifying to make sure. I'm so fearful. It's same when I'm shooting like wedding clients. If I'm not 150% sure of their name, I just stop saying it. And it gets really,
exactly.
I hope that it's not awkward. I hope I can kind of navigate using like pronouns or something like that. And
exactly. Using the old like kind of point method or like wait until you make eye contact. Yeah, I can't remember how to say your name, so I'm just going to try to make eye contact every time I need you.
Exactly. Anything fun coming up for you? Any holiday plans? Or I know you mentioned things are locking down again.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems like it's going in that direction. Hopefully, I mean, I'd like to do one last little like road trip before the year ends, maybe to like New Mexico or Arizona area. So
I was gonna say it's getting cold, so head south. That's a good time.
Yeah, that's the plan. So hopefully something like that. And other than that, it's the winter, so website update and finishing up the book.
Oh, right. That's good. I'm so excited to see that project. And are you documenting any of that process as you go along, or is it going to be one day, boom, here it is, I'm done?
I go back and forth with it. I think I'm probably going to start documenting more of it because one, it helps motivate me a lot more to be more proactive and push out more. And it'll probably help, content wise as I struggle through the winter months. So yeah, I'll probably try to document more. I don't know how or, in what shape that'll take, but we'll see.
Do you, and not to get too off track, do you personally ever struggle through winter months in terms of like, I don't know, mental depression or anything? It's so gray and cold. I talked to many people.
No, for sure.
That do. Yeah.
It's not even that. It's just like the days are so short and yeah, with the clouds and stuff, like lighting wise and all that, it's the window to go out and create anything. Cause most of what I create is, location based or outdoors. So it's definitely severely limiting. And then that in itself it'll get you down if you let it. But I try to keep other projects going. Like I always try to do a website overhaul at this time of year. I always try to, catch up on all my editing from shoots throughout the year or dive into old Lightroom catalogs and try to make old images work now that I know editing a little bit better or technology improves. Isn't
that the most fun to take a deep dive to
absolutely.
5 years ago and
say,
what the heck is this?
Especially to see like the images I decided to export and then the ones I just left like and never touched. And I'm like, wow, I like this so much more now.
Interesting, for sure. Yep. What is your website? You've mentioned it a few times. It's great to hear that you do more than just social media these days. So, do you have an easy?
Yeah, it's super easy. It's just Jesse, Jesse, Murch, MURCH.com. Yeah, I try to keep it as minimal as possible. I always struggle with that with website design is if I want to showcase like, mountains of work, or if I want it to be like just literally like my, 20 best images, or if I want to show collections and stuff like that. So it's always, I always go back and forth, and there's always tabs that get turned on and off. And
do you have many weddings lined up? Did you have like the mass reschedules and stuff like a lot of people?
Like I said, I get a lot more pickier with my weddings nowadays because I have the opportunity to, because I'm not relying on them financially anymore.
Yeah.
So I probably tend to do 10 to 20 a year.
Okay. Oh, that's good. So I only ask because I see that as a tab here. It's good.
Yeah.
Good work.
So I think, thank you. And next year will probably end up being a little bit heavier of a year because of the reschedules and then the new additions and stuff like that. Hopefully there's not too many dates that hit the same day, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's the fear is that there's double the number of couples with the same
exactly
dates, and everyone
people have
says
a knack of picking the same couple weekends.
Exactly. Yeah, our date is the 21st of the second month of whatever.
Yeah,
12,
especially because
if
if most of my clients tend to like fall weddings and stuff like that. So, and in the Northeast, you have a finite window of like 2, maybe 3 months to capture anything like that. So
that's true. Yep. My fear, I wonder if it's going to occur that so many people are eager to say yes to as much work as they possibly can, because it's been such a crazy year of reschedules, or people are just bored and stuck at home. But then by the end of next year, there's like a shift in overcompensation and people are like overly burned out. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm just purely speculating on how I could see it unfolding.
Yeah, no, I think it definitely could happen for sure, because it's like that fight or flight mentality of like, well, last year was so dried up that I can't say no to anybody. And I wonder if it's going to
with a workshop
affect
in
like
March.
people's pricing and stuff like that. Like if you're going to see people just, take stuff they would never even take before, but it's, because of how low the pricing is, but then it's like, well, it's better than nothing.
Yep. And photographers tend to have any creative tends to have a problem with underpricing themselves.
Oh yeah, but for sure. I struggled with that for so long.
Yeah, it's tough.
It's only until like recently. And I think that the financial security outside of like the creative realm alone kind of helped embolden that a little bit more, because it's like, well, I'm not really relying on it to pay my bills. So I'll charge what I, feel like I should to make it worth the while.
That's a nice feeling. Do you have any of your music kind of touring band work anywhere, like in one spot? Or
I think right now the only spot you can really see it is like a highlight on my Instagram page.
Gotcha. Okay.
It was onto my site, but that's part of the thing that I'm trying to redesign and streamline a little bit more.
Cool. Yeah. Well, good luck with everything. I'm excited for the book.
Yeah, it should be good. I hope it. I hope people like it. It's definitely, it's a weird feeling, because it's putting myself out there in a whole different way.
Sure. Yeah. So have you ever made a book ever? This would be the very first?
So I usually make a book just personally for myself of like each year of the year, like my year of favorite photographs, just to have on my shelf and just have something physical for later in life. But this is the first time it'll be something that's like pushed, and hopefully I get into a couple stores and do like some gallery showings with it and stuff like that.
That's a whole nother world that I feel like is different, is the gallery.
Yeah, I've only done 2 in my career as a photographer, and they're very, very different. Very nerve-wracking, very...
Did you ever talk to Muirhead, Ryan, about his Leica showing?
Yeah.
That seemed
and I went up and I saw his showing at, I think, the Leica store in Boston or something. Cool. They did something. And then, I spent some time with him when I was out in Portland, when I was traveling around for those couple months. So,
gotcha. He moved out of Portland. He's back in.
He left the castle that he was in over there.
Castle. I never actually saw where he lived.
Oh yeah, it was like a legit castle on a hill. It was cool.
What?
Yeah. Fascinating. Like a lot of the shots he has were like strictly from that place, because it had like the black and white like checkerboard floors and like clawfoot tubs, and it was wild.
That's crazy. Oh.
Yeah. He's like a whole separate beast. His stuff is so inspiring, and just on a whole nother level of putting creativity and thoughtfulness first in the image.
Agreed. And he and I love talking to him, because he and I fundamentally disagree on so many fundamentals.
Exactly. Yeah, it was like listening to him lecture and then listening to you like put on a lecture is kind of the opposite of worlds. So
pretty much, yeah.
Which was interesting, because weren't you guys supposed to do like some sort of a workshop thing together at one point? Or
Yep. That kind of fell by the wayside, but it's I still think it has a nugget of it has potential there whenever in-person workshops ever become a thing again. Some photographers apparently are still trying to make them happen. I talked to Benj. I don't know if you know Benj Heist. He's a wedding photographer. Yeah, it's not his. I think it's someone else's hosting it. They're doing a workshop, but I suppose...
Oh, interesting.
Like now, like this week or something. I think it's small and they're taking precautions, but I do wonder, the conference and work... Have you ever been to like a photo conference?
No.
A big one? Okay.
No, not really. Yeah, I don't know if it seems like my thing or not.
Probably not. It's not my thing at all, but I did learn how to love aspects of it, and the people really is what it came down to.
Yeah, it would mainly just be to go and like network a little bit and run into some people that, I've been following for years, and maybe play with some new gear. But other than that, I don't think it would be too beneficial.
You just have to kind of accept that this is the catalyst, the reason to get together with these people.
Yeah,
no matter
that's
how
true.
cheesy or like the character of the conference maybe just doesn't align with your aesthetic or whatever. No matter what it is, like this is the reason. So you might as well just do it because nobody else is saying like, hey, let's go all hang out at some hotel for to do
absolutely.
it. Like you need some.
I wish there was more of that because I do. Anytime I do find myself in a group of photographers and like-minded people, it's always a good time. But it's
100%.
Yeah, it's something that only happens, like you said, at these cheesy conferences or something like that.
I talked to somebody, I can't remember who it was. They were like, we really want to do one where when you go to sign up and pay your fee or whatever, it would be very cheap. And at 3 or 4 times throughout the process, as you're clicking buy, it literally says in big bold, you will not learn anything. Are you sure you want to purchase?
Yes.
Are you sure you want to come hang out with people? You will
Yeah.
not learn any, you will not sit in a chair and listen to 10 speakers for 10 hours. Like, the anti-conference and like just emphasize, lean into that. I think there's room for that on that other side
absolutely,
of this pandemic.
Yeah. See, I would be more into something like that than the traditional like, oh, you're going to change the way I, photograph at this conference.
Yeah, you're going to leave a pro. You're going to leave a professional with an established business.
Yeah, making $300K a year and
yeah. Wonder if that's ever happened. I doubt it.
I gotta think probably not.
Only to people that took all the teaching points from the lectures they learned and then started lecturing themselves about how successful you can be.
I think the lecture circuit probably breeds more lecturers than anything else.
Yes, I think you might be right, man. How weird is that?
So now are you going to try to continue to do more in-person workshops once things open up, or are you going to transfer to more like Patreon content? And
I was already feeling that.
Because I remember you did do like you filmed your workshops really nicely and put them out on Patreon, and I watched all those and stuff like that. And that seems kind of like the way to go.
It is. But gosh, I really miss it. I miss the traveling, even though I didn't really do it well. I didn't do it right. I would mostly be in and out of places as quickly as I could. Hardly would I like hang out with somebody the next day or day before because it's so physically exhausting to talk in front of people and be engaging and energizing for like 9 hours straight.
I can see that. I did a small circuit when I was in Boy Scouts because I got a life-saving award. I had to go to all these conferences and speak about it, and it's taxing, to say the least.
Whoa. Talk about that for a second.
Sorry, it was like a random thing to just throw in there, but it's my only forte into public speaking. So, my grandmother at the time, I was in 6th grade and was staying at her house, and she suffered a major heart attack. So 3 of the 4 heart valves clogged. And so I did CPR and kept her alive until the rescue squad came. And because of that, they said if I didn't do that and have the knowledge to do all that and my timing on everything, she probably would have died. So,
Yeah, CPR it's so difficult to get right. You've got to be.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you learned CPR.
I learned through Boy Scouts. Yeah. Ironically, I think it was like a month prior or whatever. We had just gotten certified and like taken the classes and all that, and even still, like it because they change like the rules with CPR and stuff every year. That who knows if it would have worked or whatever. But luckily enough, it did, and she pulled through, and because of it, I got that, and then did a lecture circuit in like the Northeast.
They just have you kind of tell your story of the experience.
I would go to different halls for Boy Scouts and talk in front of a couple hundred people.
Amazing.
Which was terrifying being in 6th grade and like.
Oh my gosh! I was going to ask how old were you? 6th grade?
Yeah.
Oh. Wow.
Yeah, no. I think that's what killed my want to public speak ever again.
I suppose it would nudge you in one direction or the other.
Yeah, exactly. I either would have been teaching only lectures right now or shying away from them completely, and I went the latter for sure.
Still, incredible story. Interesting background. Are you still, did you stay involved with the Boy Scouts through?
No, I didn't go through the ranks to like Eagle Scout or anything like that. It was a big thing I did with my dad. And then after he passed away, I kind of like lost interest in that. And then, it kind of faded out. And like, once you get older in life, the joy of it kind of goes away too. It's fun when you're younger because you're with all your friends and just camping and able to just run through the woods and do fun stuff. And
Totally. Yeah. It kind of sets you up in terms of a discipline, maybe that is helpful.
Yeah, and it definitely instilled like an early love for the outdoors, and I have no qualms or problems with, sleeping in a tent for a couple days and stuff like that, which helped with the road trips and living on the road. So,
yeah. Have you ever done any like camping or sort of outdoorsy things pure solo, just on your own? Or do you
oh yeah, for sure.
Oh, really? Cool.
Yeah, I've done a couple. It's usually only for like a weekend or something like that, just to go camp and especially this year, like during the pandemic, and living up in the mountains, I've gone out a couple times and just stayed in the tent for the weekend and brought a big zoom lens and tried my hand at wildlife photography.
Oh, really? That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Cool.
It was something. Once I saw the writing on the walls that this whole pandemic and lockdown was going to be longer than any of us thought it was going to be in the beginning, I was like, well, I need to stay shooting, and I like to challenge myself with like completely different genres than what I normally shoot. And wildlife and using giant telephoto lenses I've never done in my career. So it was a good excuse to dive in head first and learn a whole different aspect.
Yeah. It seems the being patient.
Yeah, I was just going to say it taught me more than anything patience, which is what I struggle with because I tend to really be scatterbrained and all over the place on portrait shoots, especially, and try to shoot 1,000 different things at once. And I struggle with rushing through it as opposed to really just like taking a breather and thinking about it.
Yeah.
Which is where the Fuji comes in handy too, because it's such a slower camera to use that like I treat it like I'm shooting medium format film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, even though I have the ability like digital to shoot 1,000 frames, I tend to, walk away with a third of the number of frames that I would with like shooting with my Sony.
Wow.
But just as many keepers. So it's, if not more, because there's a lot more thought going behind each image.
Yep. It's interesting to think we could live in a period at some point where there's a whole genre or an entire generation of photographers that have a certain output that is just totally different because it's coming from a different place versus somebody like you or a film photographer.
Yeah.
Like with deep intentionality and thought behind every photo versus people, and both could still be like incredibly good, compelling work, but just I wonder if we'll be able to see an actual difference and see just based on content, like, oh, that's clearly a digital shooter. Oh, that's clearly a film shooter, just based on like the concept at its core.
Yeah.
Maybe people can do that now. I don't know. I can't, but I wonder if that division could continue. Or
yeah, I mean, I think you stumble on some people like the previously mentioned, like Ryan. His stuff seems to be very like purposeful, and like I think you can tell right away he's shooting film pretty much exclusively, and he shoots 12 frames and probably 10 of them are exactly what he envisioned. So
yeah, but I think so many people when they hear film and look at film photographers, they fixate so much on the tangible, like the aesthetics of the look.
Oh yeah.
And not so much the thought and the concept as much.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I've been guilty of that so much.
Well, and also too, I mean, even online and stuff like that, you could trick people all day long. You can post the same image, but if you say it was shot on film, it's going to get far more interaction.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And it's funny, I don't like to dupe people, but I guarantee you, if you did a direct test like that, no one would ever know.
Why? Why do you think that is? Do you think it's
I think it hits that nostalgia in people's minds. Yeah.
Do you think it's anything to do with, oh, I can't believe you pulled this off in film?
I think that has a lot to do with it as well. Yeah. Okay. They see it as more of an actual process that you worked for. Even though it's like I could have, put in 10 times more work using my digital camera, but you have no idea. But you just assume because it's digital, I hit a button, it was perfect, and I moved on.
Right.
Yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. And you'll see that I think a lot of the times too, where like it could really actually be a pretty mundane image, but then if someone's like, oh, well, I stayed up all night and in freezing cold weather and waited, just for the right moment. And then I was having camera issues and stuff. Then you're like, oh, well, actually, that's an amazing image, because it like tricks your brain into thinking because they put so much effort into it, it's got to be good.
So here's what would be an interesting gallery show is you walk in and the entire setup is all this work, or here's the process I took, and it's all a lie, and it's all a lie.
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
and it's
exactly.
setting it up to be insane. And then you walk through the gallery and you try and tease out people's interpretation of just how much work whatever it is they're looking at took.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
at the end you're just like, oh, by the way,
this was all digital.
Yeah,
it was
all digital. The process was nothing like I said.
Yeah, you walk in and it's like, oh, here's my darkroom, here's where I enlarged the film, here's where I printed them and all this stuff. And then at the end it's like, oh, actually that was all set up.
And how people, I think that would, I'm sure it's been done. We can't be the first
in some form or the other.
Some form,
yeah.
I'd love to know though how that challenges people's perception of how much the end result matters or doesn't matter, and how much the story and the context around the art increases its value or emotional impact on somebody. There's a lot to unpack
absolutely.
there, but I would love to see it focused specifically on film versus digital. I think that'd be fascinating.
But it's the same thing too, where it's like, technically I can take the similar, if not the exact same photo with my Fuji as my Sony, but something about my Fuji makes me enjoy the image more and want to take the photo.
Yeah.
So it's like, there's also, it's on the back end as well. So
it constantly makes me wonder, coming from a background of more audio related stuff in my earlier years, there's this constant battle in the audio industry of basically these plugins that emulate analog sounds. So like distortion and the warmth, the quote warmth of vintage audio.
I've heard
gear.
that term all the time when I was in the music, industry.
Yep. It's elusive, but it's very similar to film versus digital photos. And
well, it's also the same thing with people trying to justify with the quote unquote medium format look that no one can actually describe really, but it's that medium format magic that everybody loves to talk about, but you see it yourself, but you can't really say it, like.
And on like a double blind A/B test, no one can seem to get it right either.
Yeah, no, not at all.
But it's interesting because in the audio world back in the 2000s, when all these new plugins started to come out, attempting to emulate the vintage analog sound, but doing it in a way that wasn't exactly accurate, there were so many people who actually called it right. Now I'm looking back a decade removed from that, in that there are digital plugins being sought out now for their inaccurate recreation of analog sounds and the uniqueness that they struck.
Oh yeah, for sure.
In that algorithm. And it's like, how weird is that? People are actually seeking out a digital
I'm going to pay you more to technically screw up the recording a little bit or something like that, because it adds this warmth that we feel and this nostalgic.
It's funny. I can't even remember how we got to this, something about gallery shows. But well, I want to leave some headroom here. I feel like we could keep talking for like another hour.
Yeah, for sure, man.
I want to leave some headroom. This has been a great time spent with you. And
yeah, absolutely agree, man. Anytime.
Yeah, this will be wonderful. Oh, I was going to say, did we already plug your Instagram directly? I can't remember. I think we did, but just to wrap up at the end here, I want to make sure.
So it's just at Jesse Murch, JESSEMURCH.
Perfect. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Same with my website, everything. So it's pretty easy to find me if you know my name.
Fantastic. Dude, it was so great to get to know you. And I hope you get this book finished and out. If you want me to hold you accountable, I'll just text you randomly every couple of weeks. Be like,
exactly. Yeah, and hopefully once the world opens up, we can actually do this face to face.
That'd be fun. I've literally never done something like this in person. I know some podcasts that they do every recording in person, and I often wonder how that changes.
How the dynamic changes. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's got to be different, but
for sure.
Yeah. Right now, that'll just remain a dream until.
Yeah, exactly.
We're on the other side of this. But hey, have a good day. Thank you so much for your time. And
yeah, man, thank you.
Do it again soon. Cool. Thanks, Jesse. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.